Good evening, everyone. I'm James Frayer. I'm host of World Events and from Chillicothe, Illinois, on this Thursday, May 21st, 2026. And my guest for today is Charlie Kim. He's out of the suburbs of Chicago and had on my show before. We talked about Iran is about 2 months ago, and now there's things that have developed since then, and we're going to talk about that. So, without further delay, I'm going to bring Charlie onto the stage. Hello, Charlie.
How you doing, Jim?
Oh, good. So, welcome again. I told people it was about 2 months ago. We had you on the show before. We talked about Iran. There's a lot of things that have happened since then. And before we go any further, uh, go ahead and tell people about your experience and your qualifications.
Sure. As you know, a couple of months ago, we were talking about things that are going on with the Iran conflict. Some people are saying it's the Iran war. And officially, it's not really per se a war. It hasn't been declared by US Congress. And one of the things that I did know about Iran in the past is when I was first going through my commissioning process for the naval intelligence back in the 2000s, actually. I even learned back when I was studying at school with my certain kind of thesis and advisors, Joseph Nye, who was National Security Council at Harvard. It seems that there's always been a concern for Iran. And as you know, being a history buff, Jim, there is a lot of people who know about the situation, especially from 1979, remembering those big lines that we had for gas problems,
Oh,
and
yes.
people were waiting a mile long just to save a few dollars at the gas pumps. Well, we're starting to see it again. So my background goes back all the way to the times when we were actually in the 79. And as I studied at Harvard and other schools, I got an opportunity to get more insight about Iran's issue because my emphasis was in the area of international political economy. Specifically, it's more international economics and international politics and how world power works. That's what I got my doctorate later on at Regent University, even though I started my program over at Harvard. And I have a law background that I started more in pre-law at Northern Illinois, but fortunately I was able to get more insight at Harvard Law School and Harvard Business School. But then got the opportunity to work for the White House for an unofficial status, but then I got to get more involved with analysis in the area of trades. So when we were talking about sanctions and trades, that's an area that I started out with the government with Clinton's administration that gave me the opportunity to understand how we use resources and even terrorist financing, because one of my emphasis was in the area of East Asia and South Korea, where I worked with at times at the Seoul Embassy in South Korea, specifically in areas of auto trade imbalance in that region of East Asia, of Japan, and parts of other countries such as China. So now we move up after having some insight in Congress when I was an advisor for 5 years from 2004 to 2009 and the co-chair of the Business Economic Council in the region. I started learning more and more about how trades get affected by certain current affairs. And now we have the issue that's going on. As you could see, our gas prices in the area of Illinois, it's getting anywhere from $5 to about $6.50. And even worse, I know there's people in California where I used to live. And if you look at places like San Francisco or San Diego, it's almost $7. It is out of hand at this point. So I'm starting to see a deja vu, as you could say, back from the 70s when I was still in the area of Downers Grove and moving up the area of understanding more and more of this kind of threat. Well, currently, I had the opportunity to be able to become the regional president for the Great Lakes of AFIO. AFIO stands for Association of Former Intelligence Officers. And it's a very selected group. People can join who are academics, but to be a full member and also a person who is one of the board or officer, which I am, you have to have a certain status and be able to pass their background check to confirm that you were involved in the intelligence community, specifically with the government, our government, United States government, which takes me to my modern time where I have certain expertise because from 2018, 2023, I was with the U.S. Department of State as a Fulbright specialist who are emphasizing in mission orient. And I got the opportunity in my last assignment to be in Kosovo with NATO forces, United Nations, with the area of international security. So that region of the Balkans and the Middle East is something that I was at recently. And I got the opportunity to be able to get a lot of insight with international securities and working with NATO forces. So that gives a little bit more insight of how I have this expertise and how I keep intact by being with the Association of Foreign Intelligence Officer, who has several people and even current people who are advisors to the president and our government.
Good. So there's your qualifications for Charlie Kim. Very impressive. And since this is a special year for the United States of America, it's a 250th anniversary, I'm going to bring on this song. And this lady is on the 250th anniversary tour, and her name is Natasha Owens. I've had her on my show 6 times, and this is her video on the 250th anniversary.
I can hear the sound of revolution echoing across the western sky, and I can just imagine the fireworks on that first 4th of July, and we're still singing America, America, land of freedom, hopes and dreams. By the grace of God, we're standing here through blood, sweat, and tears. 250 years. This is for the score of generations that shaped our heritage and destiny. We celebrate the birth of this great nation who keeps on making history. So we'll keep on singing America, America, land of freedom,
Well, I want to thank Natasha Owens for the production of that and for being a very good patriot. And, that's the thing. People have to realize if you live in this United States of America, you don't have to always agree what our government does, but you're still better off living here than in some other countries. So be proud of being American. Be proud of your freedom that you do have, which you may not have in other countries, and stand up for America. Don't come here and take advantage of my country and the United States of America. And Charlie?
Yes, well, I think that's one of the things a lot of people, as you know, with recent development of illegal immigration, and a lot of times people come into the country, and I'm a first generation immigrant. I came from South Korea in the 70s, and it was a tough time because the Vietnamese War, and my name's Charlie, and they used to call me
Yeah,
Vietcong Charlie, so they thought I was a communist. So it wasn't a very good incident, but the thing is that people do not realize our country gives us opportunities that a lot of people do not get in other countries. That's one of the reasons that I valued working for the government and going overseas or even traveling for business, because you get to get certain kind of perspective, you could say, from being able to realize how much we have in our own country. That's one of the reasons so many people come to our country. The problem with the immigration part is we're allowing people in without doing background checks and bringing in the worst of the worst, as President Trump has been stating. And it's true. That's one of
exactly.
the things that even we still have problems. And Secretary Rubio, our U.S. State Department Secretary, has been making it clear that it isn't the point that we don't want to have people in our country. We're all pretty much immigrants, except the native Indians, and they were pretty much shoved up to Canada. But the key point is that we need to understand that there is certain kind of, you could say, perspective that you have to understand. When you come to someone's home, you don't change their furniture. It's their house. You've been
Yep.
invited. So the thing is, I have no problems people coming to our country, and I'm an immigrant. But the key point is that when I first came, my parents made it very clear to me. And here's one good incident that I could tell you about that I think will relate with a lot of the people who are our viewers, is that they said, go look at yourself in the mirror. And I figured, hey, I'm a 6-year-old kid. What do I know? So I'm going
Right.
to go look. I thought I had pizza sauce on my face or something. Well, I looked and everything was fine. They said, look, you are not a person who's blonde hair, blue eyes. And they weren't trying to be prejudiced or stating racial. They're saying that you've came to a country that isn't yours per se. So the point is you start earning the right to have it yours. So you contribute, you do the right things, you go on the basis of what the country is, not what you come here and say, hey, I'm going to come to the house, change the furniture, change the television stations, make you eat different kind of foods that you might not even want to eat. My point is, it's for me to adapt and for me to add value, not to have me
Exactly.
change things to make your house become my house. That's feel of entitlement, saying that you've came in and now you get to do whatever you want. That is not the case. It's a privilege to be able to come to our country, and people have to start understanding that. And other countries, even China and Iran, you go there, you have to respect their laws and their
Exactly.
rules. So we're not asking for something more that other countries don't ask. What we need to do is get back to the foundation of understanding what our country's about and supporting that value, because else we start losing our own identity for what we've built and something that we have done. As well as, I know you've served in the military, I've served in
Yep.
the government and parts of the military. The thing is that this is not what we wanted, as saying that why we're defending our country. We defend the country to have a country that we could say is ours, not to say that everybody can come and end up making it something that we did not expect, nor we can even adapt to.
Yep, turning over the cart. That's what they're doing. So anyway, our main topic today is Iran, and Charlie's got some good information on that. And before we go to Iran, I'm going to bring up another short video, and Charlie sort of touched on this just a little bit ago, and everybody needs to pay attention what Iran's done.
History of Iran's war of terror against America. There will be Americans that say, well, why did we do this? Listen up. The arranged war against America began in 1979 with the seizure of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, where 52 Americans were held hostage for 444 days. President Jimmy Carter took no action. The day Ronald Reagan took office, the 144 hostages were instantly released. Why? Because Iran was certain Ronald Reagan was going to take action. The tale of terror continues. In 1983, Iran bombed the U.S. Embassy in Beirut and killed 63 people. Nothing was done, and America took no action. In October 1983, Iran bombed the U.S. Marine barracks, killing 241 U.S. Marines. At this time, this was the deadliest attack against the U.S. Marines since World War II and the Battle of Iwo Jima. America took no action. And then there was the Cobor Tower bombing in June 23 of 1996, killing 19 U.S. Air Force personnel and injuring 500 others. America took no action. America remembers the attack in New York City in 9/11 when 3,000 Americans were killed by terrorists flying a jet aircraft into the towers in New York. It took us 10 years to find Osama bin Laden. On October the 7th, 2023, the Iran-backed terrorist Hamas launched an unprecedented massacre against Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking over 250 hostages. Most of them were starved to death in the tunnels. The point is, history proves that Iran will murder and rape and murder and rape countless people until they are stopped by force. Other presidents did not have that courage. Donald Trump has that courage, thank God.
So now this brings us to the point of what has happened, what we talked about the last time. And why do you think, with all that stuff that's happened with Iran, and not only Iran directly, but through the proxies attacking our bases and stuff, why have we continued to let it happen with Iran?
Well, one of the things is it's a sensitive situation. We have, one thing, I guess, just going back to the theory, there's three particular points that a lot of people have to understand in international power. The first, in the area for Iran's sake, it would be more of like military and the control. The current Ayatollah that we're talking, Mujtaba Khamenei, he is in a position where he had been very involved with the clerical education. However, about 10 years ago, he was appointed to the Bajis. The Bajis are more of a group that are strong supporters of Islamic values, so-called the Sharif. And the thing is that they believe that they need to enforce this particular law and the ways of their particular ideology. Unfortunately, it clashes with one of our main ideology, which is Christianity, and even Jewish and other religions do not fit in the parameter of their particular values. So the thing is, we always knew there was going to be problems because originally, people may know, Iran is in the area of Persia. It goes way back in history before even the time with the Roman empires, the Persians before the Roman Empire had clashes with the Christians because of this ideology problem. So we always knew that we had this conflict, but the thing is that there wasn't something to make things happen, because it comes to the second point of economics. Iran, as you can clearly see at this point and understand, that they are a big provider of oil and they are a strategic location. A good example is the Straits of Hormuz. We have oil prices that we're just talking about that are skyrocketing. And we have, I think, over, the other ships as well. I think there's a total of now over close to 2,000 ships that are halted. Well, a lot of people need to understand that the prices aren't increasing immediately, because those ships are already on the area of bringing their supplies. But when they are not able to come in right away, that means there's backlog. This can take months and maybe even years to clear up, because you have to remember the Straits is not that big of an area to go through. And the area that's north is where Iran's location is, and they have control of these ships coming in. And the problem is, when you have that kind of control, it becomes where you can halt a lot of economic supplies. So the price is going to come in when those ships that aren't able to come in behind the ships that are waiting is going to start skyrocketing all of our goods and things that are coming in, not only oil, because other things go through that strait, that area, so-called, of the ocean from the river banks that they have. So people must understand how serious this becomes. Well, that goes to the political power, which is the third realm. So you have the military, economic, and the political. If you usually carry two of those, you have influence in the world. You carry all three, you can become a world power. This is something China's starting to get involved with. Russia has always known this. But again, a lot of people do not understand how it factors all the other countries around there. For example, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, so-called UAE. And people don't also understand India. India is a big factor, and they have the largest military now with 5.1 million prepared soldiers to pretty much go. They're not all active, but they have 2.5, I think, reserved. But the key point is that they are becoming a great influence, and they also use those straits. So in order to start a problem in Iran, it will actually cause a problem with all these countries, which are world leaders and humongous influence, because resources that they have, not only oil, affects everybody. That's the reason where President Clinton, all the way to the time now with President Trump, have been pretty much holding it off. But people have to understand, like I was saying, when I even was in the process of going into the military intelligence area, I remember one of my main questions, because I could disclose it now. I can't always disclose everything if it's confidential information, and you will have to get that resource somewhere else. But this I could disclose. They questioned me of possible threats, and Iran was one of them. And that was back in 2001. And even before, like I was saying, when I was studying my particular areas of international political economy, it's always been a concern with Iran because of the ideology conflict and their resources such as oil. So we didn't attack immediately because of that case. However, their uranium installation at the time, as you know, we made a few comments because we're trying to do more of an expert matter analysis. But as you could see, even with certain comments we made of what's going to happen, they've all came true now on the predictions that I was talking about. And this is what's scary. We know about this, as you even remember, Jim, we were discussing it. People know, but to take action, just like anything with theory, in practice, it can be much larger consequence. But the thing is that recently, they had 60% of uranium. You only need 20% to make bombs.
Yeah.
And people just found out recently, if you haven't heard, and they confirmed it now, which we were already projecting, they have 60% of still of their missile capabilities. So they put it under the ground. So what we're bombing in the top did not affect them. So they still are a major threat, because as long as they have nuclear capability or some sort of weapons of mass destruction or influence, when they do not feel that their particular ideology is working, that becomes a problem. One last point that you should know why we didn't attack immediately, but it is necessary to keep them on alarm and possibly attack. The thing is that the part that I was talking with the area of the different areas of defense and their departments in Iran, there's 5, and they have the area of their armed forces, their Air Force, Navy, and I said the Bajis, who are more the civilian. They have 3 classes under that, but it's about 25 million population of them, and the total population is 92 million approximately in Iran. So we're talking almost, you could say, close to 30% is what actually is active, trying to promote this ideology and trying to keep that region under their control. Well, another part, which is a very important part, the Quads. The Quad forces are the ones who are involved in all of these terrorism. This is why it's kind of important that we do something, because not only is the nuclear threat came more realistic, they've already been doing in the area that you were just played from 1997 when they had the hospice of the students. Recently, they just had an incident that had the things with the Pakistan Islamic Jihads. They're also the group that supports Hamas, Hezbollah, and we all know these are places that have even attacked our particular facilities in Saudi Arabia, in the area of Oman, Kuwait. That's why I'm saying that we are being attacked. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know this. There's been over 170 attacks on U.S. facilities and areas by this group, which is ran by and supported by Iran. So that's why we have to do something. Now, should have we gone directly? That's a question mark, because some people were saying it might have been better that we were a proxy and let Israel do the attacking and get more involved. Because one thing that China has been able to do is they have been supplying weapons and intelligence, as well as helping out with Russia bringing weapons to the area of Iran, but they are not having any soldiers there. We have now approximately over 60,000 soldiers in the area, and as now it's been disclosed, the 82nd Airborne has been there. They've been there for a period of time, because we're trying to control certain things, especially now the so-called Straits of Hormuz, because that is international waters. So this is why it becomes a big situation that in theory, it makes sense to possibly say, you know what, this is something that should be done. We should take them out because they're a threat. But in practice, you think you're solving one problem, you're causing 2 more problems or more, and they're more serious because lives are on the line. And as we just stated, people are dying. And one last point I wanted to tell you that a lot of people don't know, and it is important, that the Iran protest, there's been a protest in the area back in December of January of 2025 and early 2026. And approximately, they say, up to 36,000 have been killed of their own Iranian people for protesting against the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and now his son, who's now the 3rd Ayatollah, his son Mujtaba, he is now in control, and he's even taken a hard hand on it, saying that we have to keep them contained. So you got people who have this mentality that they've raped, they've brutally beaten people, and even the hospitals that try to take care of these injured protesters can go to jail and be confined for helping them. This is what kind of people we're talking about. talking about international humane laws, yes, there's some concern that they're saying that Trump had attacked and they're not allowed to do that of international order. But how about when it comes to the same situation when people try to protest in a country, and I understand they want to suppress them, but to literally rape and beat them to a point, and any physician or nurses try to help them can also be arrested? That is also inhumane. So we have
Exactly.
to understand what's going on.
Well, it's just like your anti-protesters, anti-Iran, or they're for Iran. You know, this is about human rights also. I mean, and they're not looking at that issue, just like the the Pope. He's not really down in what's the actions that the Iranian IRG is doing, and the the allies, that I call it allies, are doing over there to their own people, and they're not really denouncing it as enforceful as they could. But one more thing, and you touched on it. Why is, since you mentioned Russia, you mentioned China, you mentioned Europe, not more involved in the talks with Iran to keep the straits open? And should Iran be able to charge a passage fee?
The 2 points on that is, one, a lot of people don't understand, and it's important, even if they do understand, that Iran is in a situation where it's international waters, and their particular involvement of blockading is not allowed. But this also comes to another point. People have been arguing with the United States forces. As you know, we have like over 20 ships in the area, plus our 2 carriers, but we've just receded back one with a Ford model, which is our leading carrier. And it's an expensive ship. It's like 13 billion.
Right.
And with all the technology and the things of the research, it costs like $18 billion. So this is not a cheap war for us to send something out there and put that much on the line, not only monetary, but the soldiers, because we've had soldiers already die out there. So the key point is that people have to understand that this particular situation of them trying to blockade is not supposed to be allowed. So China, Russia are saying we should let the straits go through. But here's one of the biggest problems. China and Russia are still getting certain goods and able to transport things, because why? Iran is now taking the initiative to say who can pass and who can't, which is not allowed under international order.
Nope.
But the argument comes now to a point, can they charge the feed? No, because it's supposed to be free. It's international area under the maritime law, and the actually with the United Nations, that's stating that that's supposed to be area that everybody can use. No one's supposed to be able to dictate it. Now, one of the things people need to look at is the map. Iran has the northern portion, where the southern portion is by a different area. However, the straits still have to go through, and it's not that long, that they have the capability to intersect any ship that comes in, because it's a small strait that goes through, because
Right.
it goes like this, and they're on the top. Well, one of the things that China is saying, we should let people through, but again, they don't want to intervene because they don't want to get too involved with the situation. They could ask Iran, but they can't force them. It's a little different situation with North Korea, because China has so much influence, as well as the proximity. They have more influence. Here, Iran is a huge country, and they're in an area where they control that area more, and they don't need to be so dependent of others. And this becomes a problem. And you have to remember, the IRGC, so-called the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps that we were talking about from 1997, even with the case of their revolt, the coup that made the Ayatollah take control. They were in a situation where they were going to have their own jurisdiction and dictate what they want to do. ever since they've believed that they've been able to control their country and that area. So this is why China doesn't want to get too influenced. Russia has their own ordeal, which comes to the point how Russia's kind of benefiting, because now the US, our country, is trying to focus on Iran and certain issues. We have now kind of pulled back from our support and what we've been doing on our focus with Ukraine. So Russia has a political interest and military interest, not only economically with some of the oil. China has more of the economic interest, and something people haven't been talking about and people need to know: two things. One, as you might have heard, Saudi Arabia and UAE, and even now certain other countries, Iraq, Jordan, they have came to support because of this crisis of, you're saying, of the blockage. But another thing that people didn't realize, India has relationships with Russia for many years, for like 7 decades. And this group that is involved, that has now possibly the largest military force in that region with 5 million plus soldiers available, it becomes a serious issue because people don't understand that they have good ties with Russia. They're still doing joint exercises and military with Russia.
Yep,
they
with
just
Russia.
renewed their agreement. So people don't realize that India is keeping a standpoint and a hands to a point, because they don't need to get involved in something they're growing. China's growing. Russia has their own problems. So these countries, that when people say, well, why aren't they doing something? It's because everybody has something at stake. And that's why they don't really want to get too involved, which goes back to the point why people were stating it might have been better that we would have actually given sources and arms just like Ukraine, but we weren't the one getting involved. Because as you know, a lot of people are blaming this whole situation with Israel. Israel's
Yes.
the one who actually attacked Iran, and they're the ones who's had conflicts for years.
With
So
Iran.
this is not something overnight. Back in the 70s, as you know, they were fighting each other with Iran, and even Iraq had conflicts with Iran. So I'm saying that Iran's had this situation with a lot of other countries in the vicinity, but people have said it's getting messy and we don't want to get involved. And that's why people aren't just jumping in and saying, well, you got to get rid of that blockade. They're trying to do it, but they're not trying to get into the mud, so-called, because they don't want to start getting dirty and hurting their own country's resources, as well as possibly losing lives and soldiers.
Right. Now, what do you think about the surrounding Arab nations get behind the United States and putting pressure on Iran? Or is their Iran pressure gone now?
No, the pressure isn't gone. And that's one of the whole points. A lot of people don't understand that under the circumstances, that region becomes a huge factor, and it becomes global because we are in a global environment. And this is something that I learned back at the time when I was studying at Harvard. And it's amazing when you get some brilliant minds together. I asked what region I should be focusing on. And my thesis professor, he passed away, Ezra Vogel, he said, start focusing on China. But he was also an intelligence officer in the State Department. And even Joseph Nye, at the point that I went for advice, who was the Security Council chair advising the president, had told me that it's going to get to a point where there's going to be regional powers. And this was back in the 90s that I was studying this. So go figure that 30 years later, it's actually happening. We're going into regional power zones. And that's why you see the Middle East with these different countries as Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan, Israel. These places are having their own kind of conflicts. We have our own conflicts, if you think about it. We still have the area of responsibility to other countries, including the area with Taiwan, as you know, with China issue. And that comes part of the Chinese summit that we can get to possibly in a short period of time. But people have to understand that when one thing happens in one region, it's not that it is just in that region. Why? Because the people who are the regional powers are involved. And if they're involved, it goes back to the time when we had the United Nations first created in 1945. You had the five and the G5 of the place that you have with China, Russia, France, United Kingdom, and United States of America. Anytime they were involved in something, it would affect the whole world. And that's what we have today. So we cannot say that they're going to get out of this, because everybody gets affected when certain homogenized powers such as China, Russia, United States, and even the UK has been still getting involved with this war, even though they don't seem like it. That's why, and France was even possibly going to hold certain talks at times, because of this situation. So you got the G5, and if you take back into the times of the 1940s after World War II, anything that happened with them, especially if they were all involved, it's going to affect the world. And that's what's happening today.
Now, piggyback on the world, which area or which countries do you think are having the most adverse effects from what's going on in Iran?
I think the ones that are having the biggest effect really are four main countries, actually five. As you know, Israel and the United States, you have this kind of coalition with China, Russia, and Iran. However, people need to keep watch, like I said, with certain other countries like India, who could be of great influence and is involved more than a lot of people understand. They're doing, like I said, military exercise with Russia. They've had relationships for many years with them that has been strong. There's points where North Korea comes in of trying to help out, and know that they even helped out Russia with soldiers, but they have certain concerns with Iran that they have technology of nuclear capability that Iran still doesn't have. And China doesn't want to possibly get directly involved, and they're using them as a proxy, so-called a middleman, to be able to have North Korea work with Iran. So when you think that a lot of people are saying that only certain countries are involved, yes, there's countries that seem to be, you could be in the conflict, but there's a lot of other countries that have involvement on the outside areas. And you have to remember, it's under a circumstance that this world supply chain, so-called the logistics to be able to go through the Straits of Hormuz, has become a serious problem for everybody. And we're even feeling it here in our own country. One of the reasons that a lot of people feel that even though this isn't declared a war, because US Congress is the only one that's allowed to declare a war, and that's being disputed because certain people are saying that we haven't used all 60 days under the executive power of President Trump to be in a war, because after 60 days, you have to get the approval of Congress, so-called they have to vote and declare that we are in a war with Iran. The thing is that there was a time of ceasefire, and the ceasefire, so-called, some people are saying it doesn't count part of that 60 days. Some people are saying it does. But the key point is that either way, eventually, we're going to have Congress decide. And a lot of people feel, and you've probably heard, even Republicans that side with Trump in many policies will not vote for war. And especially under the big, beautiful bill that we had, they also have stated a small section clause that states that there is drafts again. And people are scared that their kids will be drafted. It's a possibility, but very unlikely. However, no one wants to be in a state of war, especially when our pockets are getting squeezed because of these prices of the logistics problem. So the key point here is that we need to end this war. And Trump does not really want to be in the war, it seems like. Neither do certain other parties, but we don't know if China and Russia is being sincere, because they're profiting politically, like I said, and militarily for Russia, because we are now trying to focus on a different place than Ukraine. And China and this is something we talked about previously, people need to understand that it's not United States' fault when you have something like Secretary Rubio and also President Trump saying that let the oil be sold, Iran oil that's already been shipped. People don't understand that's already in the market, like I told you before. So when they were saying that it's a $1.5 billion worth of oil, people have to understand that's already in the secondary market. It's not something we could stop because it was before the war. So if we let oil prices go above approximately right now about $105 per barrel, and it goes to 200, we're actually giving more profit to Iran. So it's better to get it sold out now than later, because that oil can't be halted. Because if we try to halt it, that means we have to stop people like China or Russia or even Saudi Arabia who might resell it. And we don't need to get in a fight with them.
Right. See, people don't realize
just because Iran oil that they're selling out, they're brokering it. So people need to understand the situations and not blame without understanding fully what the situation is. So what President Trump was doing was correct. And the idea of selling that oil and letting it be sold early is smarter. Him trying to do blockades, understood, but under the international law, which I studied some of, and under Article 42, it says with the United Nations that you cannot have a blockade. There was just a hearing on this. And it's true. What they said is that a blockade that is not for self-defense purposes could be a declaration of war. But again, the question comes down to it. Are we in a war or are we not in a war? That's one of the reasons I go back to the point of saying Iran-US conflict, because it still isn't declared as an actual war.
Well, that's what I'm getting to too also. And I'm getting a little bit perturbed at it. It seems like the United Nations is not really doing a good job at trying to get everything together, because to me, why aren't they negotiating with Iran instead of what country was it? Trump went there, or shoot, Pakistan? Was it where they have the where the vice president went to in Rubio? They went and tried to talk to the delegation from Iran.
Right.
And
the delegation,
why isn't the UN?
Pakistan was acting as the facilitator.
Right.
And
so
Pakistan
why isn't the United Nations doing that?
Iran. Right. Pakistan has supported Iran for many years, and their ideology are very similar. That's one of the things that India also gets involved, because as you may know, that region, so-called up north, has the Pakistani region of the Northern Indians, and there is conflict. Something that just recently happened, and I don't know if people have been watching the news or even people who are in the government usually know with the State Department. The thing is that they are now trying to find ways to suppress, and even Modi of India, the leader, had clearly stated that they are going to now try to get Muslim Indians in that region of Pakistan up north, and also more to the east, West Bengal, is going to start now having, you could say, suppression. And they're literally going to people who are Muslim faith Indians and ripping down their houses and forcing them to leave or go back to India and not have their particular support of Muslim. And this is becoming a bigger issue. That's why I stated a lot of people don't know what's happening in other parts of the region. And it's becoming a serious issue, because now you have India taking situation in their own hands, and they're trying to find ways to pretty much suppress Muslims, because they're scared. Even though they're Hindus, they're in a point where they see how Muslims are infiltrating, such as our country.
Yeah, they do.
Example that you were talking with New York, that we were
Mhm.
having Patel Sharif's law. You have things that are going on that's in Michigan, where they are allowed to
Texas.
get up in the morning at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, and start doing the chants and the prayers of Muslim, and they're not even considered disturbing the peace. And I could tell you right now, if we did that with anything of the Bible or any of scripture or Buddhism, you're going to get in trouble with the law. So,
Well, they're already
again,
complaining because the churches want to ring their bells once a day, and the Muslim community up there saying, well, we can't have that happening. So, wow. But you're right. The Muslims are a problem. Are not the Muslims, but the radical Islam. They're the problem.
the Shia.
Now, Shia.
Right, because
Exactly.
you have the
Shia.
Sunni and the Shia, two different factions,
Yep.
and people don't understand that's actually there's 6, but those are the two main ones, the Sunnis and the Shia. And the Shias are the ones who are actually more than 90% of the population of Iran. So that's
So
why
I'm gonna
people have to understand it's not saying all Muslims per se, but yes,
exactly.
a certain faction, the second largest group, which is the Shias, are the ones, and that's where you hear about the Sharia law that's happening
Yeah.
in New
Now,
York, in our own country,
why is it then? And I'm going to
and
put it out
Texas.
there.
That's the other
Well,
area
Texas
also, if
too.
you
Yeah,
remember.
that's
Texas just
big
went
time
right
in Texas.
with the Sharia law.
Why isn't the United Nations getting off their friggin' asses and doing their job, which they're supposed to be doing? And it seems like they're kicking the can down the road too. They need to get either disbanded, because it don't seem to me that United Nations is doing a damn thing to help anything out in this world.
Well,
That's my
I'll
insight.
make myself a little bit more clear. I didn't state exactly straight wording, but this time I will. As I stated, it becomes international. And the thing is, you have to remember the United Nations was created under the League of Nations prior, and it didn't work because the power is only good to the members. So if the members do not want to take action, they can't do anything about it because each country is sovereign. And under the
Right.
laws of United Nations, they have the right to be able to do what they want as long as they are a sovereign nation. People also have to understand they do not have to participate in all facets of United Nations policies or what they agree. A good example is like Russia and China. They will not declare certain things, as you know, with certain countries, such as Cuba, areas that we saw with the area of Kosovo that I was at recently when I was working in the U.S. Department of State and with NATO. The things that they state even with Iran, they do not always declare the same things by saying where the U.S. says this is a terrorist state. They do not see Iran as a terrorist state. And this is why I'm saying United Nation is a form of more like a mediation. The thing that I learned when I was in law school area and with the parts of mediation, they are allowed to try to find avenues and have open communication. When you're a negotiator, you're actually trying to be able to support a side. Well, the United Nations is a mediator. They're a forum to have open talks. And it's very difficult when we can't even have open talks, as you were talking with Palestine. They cut off the talks even to a point because Iran wasn't even coming to the meeting. So the point is, it's very difficult to have third party, such as the United Nations of other countries saying, well, you got to figure this out. And their point is, yes, we would like to do it, but blame it on the United States and Israel. No, you blame it on the area of Iran, China, and Russia.
Exactly.
So it's like
Right.
he said, she said kind of argument, and no one's getting anything done. That's why people are stating that certain terms, even in the agreement, as you know, with the Chinese summit recently, the thing is that we came away with possibly good economic advantage, but nothing was solved in the political and military backgrounds. For example, we're supposed to have 200 planes that are being built by Boeing to be sold to China, but there is no concrete agreement on that. The other thing is we're supposed to have more technology sharing, AI and information that's supposed to be coming through with China. We do have certain kind of benefits that our tariff standards are going to be more worked out. So those might come through, but there was nothing discussed of the area of political implication as well as military implication, including not only Iran's settlement, but the problems that are happening in Ukraine and Taiwan. Taiwan
Yep.
is in a jeopardy of being attacked because, again, while we're having this issue, Taiwan's wondering, are you going to protect us, the United States? And it's a concern for a lot of countries out there because so-called the four particular emphasized areas, the economies that are major, called like the four dragons, East Asia development during the period after World War II, was Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Singapore. Korea and Singapore still is more a democratic and open society. But Hong Kong, as you know, was turned back over to China, and they were supposed to
Yep.
keep it more open, but that did not happen. And I was
Nope.
at that point in 1997, I asked for assignment to go back, and I knew it was going to be a critical moment. But as you could see, it didn't work out the way it was supposed to work out after the harbor was given back to China. And now we got Taiwan, that President Trump has stated that he doesn't really want to get involved with that situation, which means Taiwan now might be at stake of not having a defender because they don't have military capabilities.
Well,
And
that's
this
because of
becomes a
what
huge issue.
that's because of what Xi first told Trump when he first there. Don't mess with Taiwan. But when you come back to agreements, I don't know what I saw is real or not. But Putin was just in China here this last week, and it looks like they had a document in a binder that could have been signed where they did an agreement signature. I didn't see anything of that sort with the United States. It seems like it's all verbal, nothing in writing. So that's the
Exactly.
scary part there too.
No, that's what I'm trying to emphasize to you because, as you're stating, they had 40 or more agreements, and it was documented. So it is now stated that they are going to act on it. But with the United States, as you said, it was more like a show and nothing was committed. And that again becomes the situation what's going on with Iran. So the Chinese summit, as we talked and predicted, it's going to be more of a leverage for China, which they use to a point, as you could see. And people don't know this, but we need to be able to stand strong. And this is why, even if President Trump does not want to continue in the war, he should declare that this isn't per se a war. And I know with some insight that he's going to try to make the 250th birthday, or even coming this weekend with Memorial Weekend, he would like to have this resolved or say that we are not continuing this kind of problem with the Middle East. And again, a lot of people are saying that it was Israel that needs to handle this more than ourselves, but we're already involved. And
So we're
this is
knee
why
deep
I
in it.
say that's another reason the United Nations don't want to get involved, because it seems like both area, the United States and Iran, is possibly breaching the agreements of United Nations. Like I said, you're not supposed to have blockades for purpose of military on bases unless it's self-defense. And also, you're not allowed to have blockades for humanitarian purposes. North Korea had the same situation, and you're not allowed to blockade if rice is coming in to feed their people
Right,
in North
exactly.
Korea, because they don't have it. And that's why I'm saying right now it's a very difficult situation, because they got these powerful nations that are pretty much involved, and the United Nations don't know what to do, because when you got all your top people, generals, arguing with each other, and you got lesser bars, or you don't have a star, you got to just keep your mouth shut.
No shut.
And that's why the United Nation isn't being as active.
Okay. I want to touch on this one topic because I know we're getting short on time for you to go. I'm going to bring this video, and it has to do with Iran's uranium and the Straits. Now, my opinion is Iran definitely don't want to get up the uranium. Okay. Why can't we say, watch them really close, better than what we did before with the other nuclear arms treaty we had? And have them reopen the straits and not charge. So I'm going to bring out this presentation here. I think it just came out today, and see what you say on this.
Those are rising, with more than 1,500 ships and oil tankers still stranded. Iran, by the way, has released a map showing what it calls a controlled maritime zone. Tehran says it's committed to reopening the strait to friendly countries that abide by its terms, which will most likely include fees for just going through the strait. And Washington, by the way, reacting to that, saying it is simply unacceptable. Harris, back to you.
So, in other words, to me, I don't want Iran having uranium at 60%, but they don't want to give it up. So it's going to take a lot of backroom working to say, okay, you can keep your uranium. We want to know how much you have, where it's at, so we can watch what's going on. You have 20 years or whatever to not show your ass again, but keep the Strait of Hormuz open and don't charge anything. All they're trying to do is make money off of it. Now you're in your topic.
Right. 2 points on that. First, the point with uranium. They do have uranium. They actually have the availability in their resources, which is different from certain areas, because if we really had a huge threat, North Korea is a bigger threat, and they've launched tons of missiles successfully, even over Japan. So they have much better capability of nuclear arsenal than Iran by far, because Iran might have certain things, but they do not have test as well as stockpiles of it. The thing that they still do have approximately is it's stated that they probably have anywhere from probably around 600 to 1,000 capable missiles. And that's why a lot of people, and it went down, possibly down to 200, 300, they're saying, but still they have an arsenal capability and they can make more because they have that resource in their area. So that's why they become such a huge threat compared to someone like who's already been shooting missiles like North Korea. That's why Trump statement and Secretary Rubio have stance to be able to say they are a major threat to the United States and they're not slowing down. Going to your other part of the questions, maybe we should allow them to open back up and then we monitor them. We've tried to do that several times under the IAEA, right? And under the International Atomic Agency, Energy Agency. It's been said that they were supposed to show their stockpiles, just like North Korea is supposed to show their particular development of nuclear capability, not for military purpose, but for their so-called energy resources.
Right.
Because, we have examples where we have nuclear plants, and Illinois has more nuclear plants than anywhere, but they've shut down a couple of them. But we had 6. Now we have 3 to 4. But the thing is, people have to understand nuclear capability can do thousands more times than regular kind of energy. If it's hydraulic, with water capability, if it's wind with those big windmill fans that we have, it is. Now the problem is containment, and that can spin off, as they say, to be weapons of military source. That's the scare. And a good example is with China. China still does not have a nuclear carrier, and they're on their 4th ship. The one that they just built recently, the Fujian, that is a type 3, and they're going to a type 4. We still have much more than them. We have 10 to 11 carriers, and we have the Ford model and the Nimitz, who just went out to Cuba into the area. So that's another whole issue we're getting on with Cuba, like they did in Venezuela. But those 2 carriers have nuclear capability, and they can be, with nuclear propulsion, they have capability to be out there for literally months to year even.
And not have to refuel.
Exactly.
Right,
That's why the question is, if they aren't using it for military purposes, they could always convert it quickly. For example, a lot of people don't know. People shouldn't underestimate things with Iran, because why? Just like we saw with China, when we thought that we're so far. ahead of them. It got to a point where people, and China has actually more ships than we do. They have over almost 800 vessels, and we do not have as many as they do. And people don't even understand that we have more carriers, but they have more vessels. And
Right.
this is why a lot of people underestimate, just like Iran's situation, we can be underestimating them because a lot of people said that we kind of handicap them. They say within 6 months, they're going to be 100% capable with their capability, with their drones and missile capability again.
Well,
So
they're already
we
using
cannot
this time.
sit here. Exactly.
They're already using this
And
time
that's
to
why I'm
resupply.
stating.
How
And
long
that's
do you
one of the
give 'em?
reasons that even if we have that agreement, Jim, it doesn't mean they're going to uphold it because we've done it before. And just like North Korea, when it comes to time for inspection, we have to give them warning. So it's just like a kid that you have in their room and you're going to go check their room. Next thing you know, they cleaned it out. They've made it perfect. And it's like, wow, nothing's wrong here. But it's because they know you're coming. And
Well,
even
the
if
news
no,
on
I'm
the
just saying
street.
that this is
Yeah.
why one of the problems is we could say that this is what they told us, and this is something that President Trump was
I
trying
know
to
you
say with
can't
Xi
trust 'em.
Jinping in China, saying that he agreed to buy these things, he agreed to do these things, he agreed to buy 200 planes from Boeing, but nothing's in writing. And that's why,
Right.
can we really trust them? Because what's really, even if it is, can we hold them just like the United Nations? Because it's their own sovereign right to do
Nation.
something or pretty much back out of what they said.
Well, the word on the street where I work out, which is sort of amazing, and it involves the price of fuel. People, the ones that understands what's going on, they're okay with paying the price of fuel right now. But most of them want to say, get it over there, get it done, and if you have to, turn them into glass. This is how
Well,
this word on the street is they want to get it over with. They want to really eliminate the IRG and the Minis and get it over with, get it done. This way, and like you said, you can't trust Iran, because the nuclear treaty agreement we had that Trump tore up, they didn't go by that. They don't go by anything. And it seems like they don't want to give up their ambition for offensive nuclear capabilities. It's not defensive like they try to say. Their total goal is offensive capabilities. And I'll end on that.
Well, that's what the dispute's about. And possibly I'm a little bit more, you could say, subjective because of diplomacy. But
Right.
a lot of countries
There's a time
are
when
saying
diplomacy,
we might be able to push them. But you're right. If it gets to a point and it's a threat to our country, we do have to take our force, and we still do have the strongest capability military power, even if we don't have as much ships as China or much soldiers as something like India or North Korea. But
right.
we still have the best air power. We have, I think, over 13,000 planes, aircraft striking weapons, but
best technology.
and right.
The best
And I mean,
technology.
the next one that probably has this certain capability is Russia and things, and they're not even close to us. They're in
No.
the hundreds. So the thing is that we're in a position where we can still have the air power, we have the naval power, but again, we can't underestimate countries because they get support. And like I said, one of the reasons I'm not so much for military tactics is because you have to remember China, Russia, and other countries in that vicinity, Pakistan, still have influence to help out. And Iran still has a lot of people. Like I just told you,
Yeah,
the
they do.
Bajais have 25 million. They start their kids in grade school to start hating Americans per se, or people who are non-Muslims. They have people in the situation with their quads, and they've infiltrated all over the countries and areas, even in our own country, so-called with issues that happen with the jihads and the Hamas. So we can't just say that it's going to be a simple fight. And that's why the question mark comes in. And if we do, like you said with the United Nations, are they going to allow it? Because their point is, you cannot blockade if it's not for self-defense. We've declared they're a threat, but they did not strike first. So that's the problem that people are saying. They've struck in little
Well,
ways, like 170 attacks, but it wasn't
right.
directly
So they have,
in our
they've
country.
attacked our troops. They have attacked our bases. So yeah, we
Yes.
have been under attack. So they can take that saying and shove it where the sun don't shine. Okay.
Well,
And-
that's
and
the
what-
point that if we have to take
Yeah.
action, we still have the
Yep.
military to do it, and we have the world power. So it's better to do it sooner than later.
Then later, because all Iran's going to do is take this time, build. One last thing on the draft. Okay. What it is, the draft is built, it's been effective ever since I was in high school. Okay. The thing is, they're not going to actually go out there and start drafting people like people think, because the news spins that narrative. What it is, when these gentlemen are getting out of high school, they are not going and registering in the draft like you're lawfully supposed to. So what they're going to do is automatically enroll them in the draft. It's not saying a draft is coming to pull you out of your work or out of your lives and put you in the military. All it is to make sure you're doing what you're lawfully required to when you graduate high school.
Right. The selective service, which I even signed up for when I graduated in certain points of high school, I
Me
was
too.
already on the list. And you get a card that actually gives you a number, and it shows that you're not going to be a draft dodger, even though you can be a draft dodger at times. But the key point is that, yes, but one thing that is a little different, Jim, is that if there is a time of war, they can start pulling a lottery or in order
Right.
to pull those people in. That was not stated or a specific kind of, you
It's
could
been
say,
known. It's been known, though.
declaration.
No,
Oh,
but
yes.
it's been known for
Intact
years.
that if we get into a major war, you're on the
Right.
selective service, that you should be called up. But now we're actually having a function and it's being enforced.
Right.
I
Exactly.
mean, it's
Just
supposed to
like
be
what
under
I-
the big, beautiful bill, right? But again,
right. I mean,
why are people so? Because if you look at Iran, you know that they have mandatory service still over there.
mhm. So does
There's
Israel.
mandatory service in South Korea
Yes.
because they're still in a state of halt. That's
A
why
war
you
with
have the
North Korea.
DMZ. Yeah, it's not peace treaty. Oh, that's
Well,
why
it's like
people
we
don't
have-
understand this is happening. Even in
'Cause-
Mexico, they have to serve, but it's very short. Where Korea has 3 years, Iran has years. But the thing is that in Mexico, it's only like 8 weeks or something. 9. I mean, it's a very minimal time. So it's not
What it-
or in months. But the thing is
what
that
it is,
still there's people who do serve, and we should in our country. But again, the question comes down to it: is it a resource that's necessary? And people don't always understand. If you continue in college or you have other resources that could help our country, such as intellectual, you do not
Right,
get
you get the
drafted.
waiver.
And that's still
Right, you
true
get
in
the waiver.
countries like South Korea.
yeah. Well, the thing is, and I'm going to put it this way, I don't care if it ticks people off. We have too many wussies in this country. So Charlie,
No, there's a
and
lot of
Greg,
entitlement, and yeah, I'm smiling
there's
because
too many wussies.
it's gone to
You
a
know.
point, and
Yeah.
just to leave on this note, I had a friend who was in the area, and he was telling me with boot camp again with the military that if you came within like 6 inches or closer, it's like encroaching a privacy space. And they started putting that with people who were the drill sergeants and the
I
master
know.
chief. The chiefs that were training these people. And it's ridiculous because if you look back at the time, if you can't handle someone spitting on you a little or yelling in front
Or
of
in your face,
what are you going to do when people start shooting? I mean, this
because
is ridiculous.
what it is, they're used to not having any repercussions, no structure. And what the military is supposed to do is you go to boot camp, they bring you down, and they build you in a military way. And this is what it is.
Right,
These
it's a
people
different
don't want to be
mindset,
told.
but it's building
Right,
your character.
they don't want to be told what to
be
do.
able to
What-
handle, even to save your own life as well as others. So that
Others.
becomes a necessity.
Yep, like there's a woman that she was on a Navy carrier, probably a carrier, and she's complaining about her sleeping habit or quarters because they have bunk beds in the carriers, and yeah, if you turn on your side, it's rough. Well, she's complaining about it. Well, I guess you should have researched that shit before you enlisted in the Navy. So, I've done it. I put up with it. You know, I work 12 hours a day plus 4 hour shifts, 7 days a
She's
week
lucky
when,
she
in the
gets to
military.
sleep sometimes, because when you have
Exactly.
your duty calls and stuff, some people sleep for 1 hour. And if you're going
Yep.
to higher level, like I had some people when I was in NATO, they have the special operations things. They say that you're going to be able to go chow down for 30 minutes and you have 5 minutes and they say you done. And it's like, no, their point is shove what you got in and that's it. I mean,
You know,
you can't go on that perception that you're going to have what they say. You got to go on the notion of what the reality is. And you have to
You have to-
remember, you're there not only for yourself, you're there to defend all those others who aren't there. And that's why
Exactly.
people need to get back in that mentality. It's not about me, it's about you. And this
You.
is
Well,
what
it's
we've
just like-
lost.
It's just like that video I showed in the very beginning about Natasha Owens, the song, the 250th. We got to put patriotism back in this country. You got to wear it in your heart. Okay, that's why you see that flag, American flag, that don't tread on me flag behind me.
You start doing that, we'll understand what honor is again. And believe it or not, we will have more people being able to protect you instead of you only protecting yourself. And that's what we got to
Exactly.
start understanding again. We got to bring back those values. That's what
Because
makes a
otherwise-
nation strong. That's what makes a community strong. That's what makes family strong. And we've
That's what
lost
makes a
that
country
nucleus
safe.
philosophy. Going back to the ideology of believing in something.
Believe in
And that's
have
why if we have a clash with Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Muslim, the thing is people have to start understanding again, we need to start believing in something. And if we don't start believing in ourselves and protecting our home, we're not going to have a home.
exactly, because you found that out. That's why your family left South Korea. All right,
That's
Charlie.
why they said that when you come and you have something on your face, their point was, look at yourself. You're not blonde hair, blue eye. They weren't trying to be racist. Their point is that
No.
you came to America, you start becoming American. They told me when you're old enough, you could go back to Korea or wherever you want. But while you're here, you become an American. And that's what
There you
I
go.
understood and I still value today
And
as
you
an
value
American.
that, but you still value your home country, which is good too. That's what
I do.
people
I
don't
respect
realize.
my home country, but I know my family is in America because that's where
Exactly.
I've been grown. And this is where
Yep.
I have my roots, even though
Unlike
I
some of
have
the
deeper
ones that's-
roots overseas.
Yeah, unlike some of the ones that recently came over the last 5-6 years, they don't have any values for this country.
That's my point, and that's a problem.
Yep. It is, and here Charlie's a prime example of a person that came from another country and has his main values for the United States, but still he has the heart for his homeland. Thank you, Charlie.
As they say, I'm an American with an Asian twist.
There you go. A little Asian, like a lime twist. Okay.
The
All right, Charlie.
that part of the essay got me into Harvard. I used that.
All right. Well, you have a good one, Charlie, and you get going, and we'll talk on the phone here, or maybe the next couple of days. And I really enjoyed it. It was a good show. We went through some good topics today.
Well, all our predictions are coming true, which is
Hmm.
pretty impressive.
Now I'm going to have another
So
show with
hopefully we
probably
get
Ray
more
Estrada.
audience because it's working. Maybe you'll get to a point where we would be able to do some good to help out with these cases that we have in Iran as well as Ukraine and Gaza. There's so many in Cuba now, as you know. I
Oh, yeah.
hear you're getting a show.
I'm going to have a show with Cuba probably next week, maybe with Ray Estrada. And we've had him and I's been on the show before about Cuba, and things have changed since then, just like your show with this Iran deal. All right, Charlie,
Long
you get
time
going.
from the Bay of Pigs with Kennedy.
Yeah, and that came close to a nuclear push of the button too. All right, Charlie, you have a good day. Wish you luck on your thing coming up here shortly, and we'll be on again. God bless you. I'm glad to have you as a friend of mine. Glad we have met in person too, more than once. And God bless this country. Let's God bless the world, and let's God bless the innocent people. Thank you, Charlie, and
Yes.
goodbye.
God bless you, and thank you for the opportunity.
You're very welcome.